Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Lit Talk this evening from the Connecticut Literary Festival. I'm the director of the Connecticut Festival, Jotham Borello, so thank you for coming out tonight on this wintry April day here in New England. And I know parking is tough in this neighborhood, so I do appreciate it. Tonight we have a great program. It'll be moderated by Jose Gonzalez to celebrate National Poetry Month, and he will introduce the poets in just a minute. So before we start, I want to talk a little bit about the Lit Talks. One thing the pandemic has done for the Connecticut Literary Festival is forced us to be a year-round organization. When the pandemic hit last year, we had to cancel the 2020 festival and we began a series of Lit Talks. This one will actually be completing our kind of spring season of all the Lit Talks. We've done maybe a dozen or 14 of them. We've had over 2,000 attendees, so thank you for adding to that number and participating tonight. In addition tonight, I want to thank our production supervisor, Christiana Torres. She is the person behind the stage pulling the levers, and this is Christiana's last Lit Talk. She is going to graduate in about a month, so I wish her the best of luck, and thank you, Christiana. The Lit Talks have been supported by the CT Humanities. They've worked hard behind the scenes supporting the arts, so I want to thank them. Also, the festival is housed at CCSU, so thank you everyone in the English department and the Dean's office at CCSU, in addition to Real Artways, another one of our partners, and RJ Julia. It's been a pretty exciting couple months for us at the Lit Festival. A year ago, we started a whole series of, we started the Literary Anthology, the Connecticut Literary Anthology. The first book was last year, and we just finished our submissions, and I want to thank everyone who submitted. We had over 300 Connecticut writers submit nearly 400 pieces of prose and poetry, and that's pretty exciting. So the book will be out in October, and that's the big news. We are going to proceed with a Connecticut Literary Festival in October at Real Artways on October 23rd. We've just started that planning and the grant writing and all that business. So you may see a solicitation from us. We are funded all through our own fundraising for the festival to help pay artists and for all of our facilities. The big news also, we're going to sponsor or host the Connecticut Book Awards. We're partnering with the CT Center for the Book, and on Friday the 22nd, we are going to host the Connecticut Book Awards. So thank you to Lisa Comstock and Erin over there. Following that on Friday night, we are going to have the greatest, Jose, you wait, you'll be there, Jose. It's going to be the greatest post-pandemic book party ever for the 2021 Literary Anthology. So thank you everyone for coming out. And now I want to introduce our host for this evening. Jose Gonzalez is a nationally award-winning educator and Fulbright scholar. He was born in San Salvador in El Salvador and immigrated to New London, Connecticut at the age of 8. He's the author of the poetry collection, Toys Made of Rock. He's been a speaker at colleges and universities around the country. His efforts to improve the conditions of Latinos pursuing college degrees or career in higher education, and for his poetry, three things he has been dedicated to. And he's also the founder and editor of LatinoStories.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Jose Gonzalez.
All right. Well, thank you, Jotham. And thank you all for joining us. We got a special program tonight. It really is. It's an all-star Dreamcast. And I think it was intentional to have this group go last because everyone else was just opening up for this group. They're that talented. And congratulations again to Christiana. I can't believe that she's not going to be here. She's just such a pro. And so thank you. And thank you to the Connecticut Literary Festival as well. Our first reader tonight is a young one. She is a young one, but a talented one, let me tell you. And she comes from New London, of all places, right? And I say of all places because as you heard, I'm also from New London. And let me introduce her a little bit more formally. So she is a 16-year-old high school student at New London's Science and Technology Magnet High School, and she's a member of Writer's Block Inc. in New London. Writer's Block Inc. is this incredible organization that does magical work with youth throughout the area, and especially in New London. She has always had a passion for creative writing and more recently poetry. Toward the end of middle school, she decided to indulge in this passion further and was thrilled by all the new opportunities writing had to offer. She also enjoys music, photography, and movie watching in her free time, and who can blame her? So let's hear from her. Thank you for joining us, Deja.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Very glad that I got this opportunity through Writer's Block. Um, yeah. So, did you just want me to read or talk about myself? What exactly did you need me to do?
Well, we do want you to read for 6 minutes. All right. You have
Okay.
up to 6 minutes
Yep.
if you like. Okay.
Okay. This piece, of all the pieces that I chose for tonight, this one actually doesn't have a title yet. I'm not very good with titling things. It always tends to slip my mind, but I'm very proud of it. So, yeah, enjoy. Trapped in a screen, seen as a source of entertainment, stripped of our origins, left with nothing, left with not even the bare bones of our cultures, forced to make our own, pushed to reclaim what was used against us, to dehumanize us, to justify looking down on our struggles. You shield your eyes, looking to the sky, while we live in one of the many nightmares you fabricated. And once your head is pushed down, giving you no choice but to face the people you continue to put down, you ration the ladders, giving us singular rungs, cutting the ropes into minute strips, claiming you've done all you can and that we aren't trying hard enough. America, you let him die at your hands. You let all of them die at your hands, leaving the rest of us to quake in fear, praying that we aren't next, electing criminals into shambles you call office and murdering men for crimes committed years before I, a girl just over a decade and a half old, was even born. I'm at my wit's end. I feel no matter how raw our throats get from screaming, you will choose to blatantly ignore us, repeatedly casting a shadow over every move that we make, every chain that we shatter. But we refuse to live in a world where we are criminalized, demonized, and dehumanized for simply existing, for exuding behaviors by which you have forced upon us. So we will take your shattered ladders and severed ropes and use our natural ingenuity to escape the bottomless pit you've sacrificed us to. Thank you.
Mm, 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 mm. Way to get us started. Wow. Wow. Way to get us started. I'm telling you. Want to
Uh,
read it?
yep, I have another one right here. It's kind of it's a similar theme. But yeah, this one it does have a name. The name's still a bit of a work in progress. It's called Rotten Flesh. It's a little, I know, a little gross, but yeah. Um,
That's okay.
you will rot in your cell. No, I hopes or I wish you will rot in that cell and experience a life worse than death itself. I hope that you never have another sunny day, that your days are forever dark and stormy. I hope you feel a loneliness greater than no other because you can't even begin to understand what you did to that man, the full gravity of what you have done. Now, I'm not religious, but when you get sent down under, even the devil himself, laced in his spiteful red, will look at you with disgust and turn your will into dust. But I'm sure it'll break before then. That sharp pain in your gut, I hope it never falters, making you sick for a millennia, making you cry and weep and knocking all the wind out your lungs. Am I making things clear for you, or am I speaking in tongues? As for the rest of you, let's get one thing straight. This may be a win, but it is not the win that you think that it is. This war is far from over, and I'm hesitant to say it's even begun, because at the end of the day, this system let that man strip the air from Floyd's lungs. Thank you.
Wow. 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 Such powerful, powerful words. I'm telling you, this is a rock star right here. And let me tell you something. She's also very modest, I should add. I asked her, I said, so who knows that you're reading today? Do you teach her? She's like, well, I'm not sure, not, and I'm thinking, boy, hopefully they tuned in and hopefully they found out about it somehow. Can I ask you a question before we go on to the next poet? Let me ask you, what role do you think has living in New London, right, played in developing your poetry, right? And I say that as someone who came from New London, who feels New London in my words and my pen and my heart. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that it's a very diverse community, especially in, in Connecticut. Like it there's a lot of different people here that come from all over the world really. And so I think that it definitely sort of gives me a different perspective on a lot of different issues. So, I never write for anyone. I don't use my voice to speak over others, but I definitely think that coming from a community that's so diverse, it allows me to sort of, in my writing, provide perspectives that other people may not have because they don't have that kind of diversity in their communities.
Wow. Wow. Interesting. So again, we're going to hear a lot more from you, I'm sure, right? So we know that name. We're all going to say, I remember her first time we were introduced to her, right? Good stuff. All right. So our next poet is someone, when we talk about someone who is all of a sudden showing up everywhere, and I saw this list recently, one of the best poet, like top 20, I mean, he is well respected, not only for being a great artist, but also just a wordsmith and a half. So his name is Aaron, all right, Aaron Caycedo-Kimura, and he is the author of the forthcoming full-length collection Common Grace and the chapbook Ubasute, which won the 2020 Slapering Hol Press chapbook competition, and it's a beautiful chapbook. I'm going to ask him to hold it up in just a second. His poetry has appeared in Beloit Poetry Journal and Poet Lore, DMQ Review, Tule Review, Louisiana Literature, the Night Heron Barks, and elsewhere. Aaron earned his MFA in creative writing from BU, Boston University, and is a recipient of a Robert Pinsky Global Fellowship in Poetry. Do you have that book right in front of you, Aaron? No, there. Look at that work of art. Honestly, that in itself, and of course, see that art back there too.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Jotham.
All right.
Thank you, everybody who's here today. I can't see you, but I know you're there, and thank you for coming out to hear us read. I'm going to read 4 poems from this book, Ubasute. It's a chapbook that was just published by Slapering Hol Press in March. And this book is about my parents. It touches off on their experiences in World War II, of being newlyweds, being parents, settling into suburbia, and mostly and finally about growing old and passing away. The first poem I'm going to read for you is a poem about when they first got married, and it's entitled The Hardest Part. The fire truck siren downstairs raided the air of my mother's dreams. She'd scream in her sleep, my father told me, even after we married. More than a decade past the Second World War. For him, American concentration camps. For her, the firebombing of Tokyo. They moved into a San Francisco apartment that rented to Japs. A 1-bedroom walk-up above the Post Street fire station. They painted their bathroom black. It wasn't style then. Shelved books, unboxed a new rice cooker, watered a shrub of Japanese maple potted for their future garden. When the station got a call in the middle of the night, the rumble of the overhead door crumbled into the wreck that was once their home. Swirling lights flashed ancient trees into flames through the thin silk curtains of her eyelids. No warning, no drill, no cover. My father stilled her body, his broad hand on her shoulder or hip, as they lay in the dark, listening to the slowing of her breath. The hardest part of those nights, he said, was waiting, sometimes hours, for the truck and the men to come back. My next poem is called What's Kept Alive. She crunches her walker into the sea of pebbles surrounding the stepping stones, tells me, this bush with flowers is Japanese. That one is too, but different. I hover close behind, ready with an outstretched arm as if to give a blessing. Pick that large weed near the lantern, by the roots, and throw it into the pail. My father planned and planted this garden 50 years ago, hidden behind the fence of their Santa Rosa tract home. But he's gone now. She hires a hand to rake leaves, prune branches once a month. Soon she'll be gone. I'll sell the house, return to Connecticut. A stranger will buy it, become caretaker of the garden, but won't know that from their San Francisco apartment, my father transported the Japanese maple, cradled in a small clay pot, the momiji, now guarding the north corner, and that my mother chided him for bothering with a dying shrub. Two more poems. This next poem is about my father, and it's entitled Memorial. Straight as steel, hands on hips, Dad balances like a hood ornament on Irving Wasserman's head. Irv stands feet shoulder width apart, arms stretched out wide. A towel turban cushions his scalp. On the San Francisco Marina Green, sunbathers pay no attention to the two college gymnasts in tight swim trunks. The black and white image is attached to an email Irv sent this morning. He says he lost contact after my parents married 60 years ago, would like to reconnect. He doesn't know he's 7 years too late. No online obit, found me through my website. He calls my father remarkable, a word I never heard used to describe him. But yes, look, there he is, poised in the air. The husband who never cheated, the father who never struck me. My last poem is entitled My last poem is entitled Owl. Morning ghost, white, burnt umber. I heard your hoot in my sleep. You sweep across the road, talon a vole at the oak's foot. Night eyes stare back, bronze beak tears open the dawn. Caught in sunrise, you dissolve into shadow. I walk the long driveway from the mailbox, riffle through yesterday's junk, open a Land's End catalog. There's my mother's white wool sweater. She gets more mail than I do, though she's never lived here and is long gone. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Wow. Just leaves me speechless, which is some people say it's hard to do, right? Really well done.
Thank you.
I should also add, by the way, you know, some of you know that he's also his wife is also very talented. I got to give her a shout out, Luisa. Together they're like the Jay-Z and Beyonce of poetry in Connecticut. You know, they really are. They are. You know, I have a question for you,
Sure.
though, because as a visual artist, right? How do you characterize your relationship then between visual art and your writing, right? How would you like? I'm curious. Sometimes does one feed into the other, or how does that work?
Yeah, for me, painting and writing are very similar acts. As the poet Frank O'Hara so cleverly and delightfully pointed out in his poem, Why I'm Not a Painter. For anyone out there who doesn't know this poem, I encourage you to look it up. It's a fantastic poem. Frank O'Hara's Why I'm Not a Painter. And in this poem, he sets out implying that being a painter and being a poet are two completely separate things, but ends up showing that they're really quite similar. You know, for me, the process is similar. I consider myself a maker. You know, I make things, I construct things. So I make a poem, I make a painting. You know, both are expressions, constructions, you know, through a medium by which you can create images and tell a story. I like to say that I write poetry because sometimes I like to paint without all the mess. So yeah, they
without all the mess, so you don't have to clean up afterwards.
That's right. So they inform one another. You know,
Well,
for me,
interesting.
Yeah, a poem is a painting, and painting is a poem.
Interesting. I mean, as someone I mean, as someone who doesn't have a visual artist bit of talent, you know, I find that fascinating and really cool. Well, thank you. Our next poet is probably a familiar name to many of you and a familiar face. Peggy Dietz Shea. She is a two-time winner of the Connecticut Book Award. She is also the author of more than 450 published articles, essays, stories, and poems for adult readers, and award-winning books for young readers as well. She teaches in the UConn Creative Writing Program, and she founded and she also directs the Poetry Rocks reading series in Vernon, Connecticut, where she is the poet laureate, by the way. All right, so thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you, Jotham, for getting this together, and thank you to all your sponsors as well. I'd like to start with a poem that appears in the new book put out by Margaret Gibson, edited by Margaret Gibson, our state poet laureate, and it is called Waking Up to the Earth, and it is full of poems by other poets laureate concerning nature and the environment. So following the theme tonight with Earth Day, I will read 3 poems having to do with the environment. My first poem is called Wasted Lives, and it is sestina, and which I think is a very handy form to use with problems that keep repeating, because there are words that keep repeating in a sestina. It's for those of you who might not be familiar with poetry form, it's 6.5 stanzas of 6 lines each, and 1 last stanza of 3 lines, and there are 6 words that keep repeating throughout the poem. And it's really helpful to find words that can work both as a noun and a verb, such as refuse and refuse, and also words that can be nuanced with a suffix or a prefix that changes it. So this is Wasted Lives, Addis Ababa, March 11, 2017. Outside Ethiopia's capital, the Repi landfill, full of 50 years of refuse, home to thousands of poor displaced by high-rises, mounts and mounts until it cannot anymore, and the waste avalanches, eliminating scores of lives. Ambassadors of the African Union live in the pricey city, taking their fill of fashion, food, and fun. They waste time debating while they refuse to deal with the people who mount the garbage, foraging for treasures, say misplaced remotes or uneaten crusts. They call the place kosha, meaning dust, meaning lives disintegrate beneath these mounts, meaning sloughed skin cells fill surrounding huts, meaning material refuse abides with its own kind, human waste. Some blame the collapse on plastic waste. Others blame the people who place their homes too close, who refuse to live acceptable lives. The poor blame those whose pockets are filled. They claim ecological discrimination. They mount protests against economic injustice. They mount tiny caskets on their shoulders. This waste of life, this way, is not new. In 2000, the Payatas landfill landslide, the Java avalanche in 2005. Guatemala City places the whole country's trash higher in priority than the 7,000 lives who breathe noxious gases released by its refuse. Those who fight fires caused by methane, who refuse to conveniently die for what amounts to a pittance in taxes. Let's examine our lives. In the north end of Hartford, our mountain of waste is housed under a guise of grass. New York City placed its trash in Fresh Kills, Staten Island. China fills and sends barges with bulging amounts of waste to sea, where microfibers and plastic refuse replace lives in the marine food chain. Our seafood, our fill. Now, to continue with the plastics theme, I wrote this first for young readers, but I think older readers can be influenced by it as well. It's a concrete poem, and you can see I'm not an artist like Aaron is, but I hope you can see the shape of a whale here. It's called Hooked on Plastic, and I was at a lecture in Florida near where my mom lives, and actually it was run by a friend who's a children's book illustrator and who also made these protest earrings because there was a lot of pollution in the Florida waters from Lake Okeechobee. And the renowned oceanographer Edie Witter was giving a talk, and during the Q&A, people asked, oh, should we be eating farmed fish? Should we wild caught seems the best choice? And her answer to that starts this poem, Hooked on Plastic. MacArthur genius oceanographer Edie Witter. I don't eat wild fish anymore. They're full of plastic. Recently in Norway, a whale washed up with 30 plastic bags and other plastic solids in its stomach. It starved. There's no room for food in a stomach full of plastic. There's no nutrition in 30 empty plastic bags. 30 plastic bags can't pass through the intestines of Earth's largest animals. Experts expect there will be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2050. As the seas rise and ocean currents slow, we shall drown in plastic, wash up, bloated, full of ourselves. My last poem, I don't know if other writers feel this way, but it was hard to write about COVID. I think I banged out some haiku, just little bites of things, but it's so big, right? But one day when I was walking my dog with a friend of mine, and we walked the dogs together in this forest, and she, Sherry Woods, to whom the poem is dedicated, was one of the first people in Connecticut to become sick with COVID and very direly ill. In March, she works still at a nursing home in Vernon here, and she's also now fighting lung cancer. So this is for Sherry Woods. It's called December in the Year of Eruption. And eruption was a new word for me. It's kind of like eruption, but it's I-R-ruption. And it means sudden movement of animals or people from their normal pattern of migratory flights or movements. And it's usually because their home environment lacks the food that they need, or their migratory destination lacks the food that they need. So everything kind of came together in this poem. December in the Year of Eruption for Sherry Woods, 2020. Hiking in the Belding Forest, I'm felled by the sight of trees crisscrossed on the forest floor as if gods had forgotten their pickup sticks. Trucks hauled away other trees to where? Canopy gone, the onslaught of air is unbearable. The state prescribed these cuts to thin, mature oaks and destroy invasive spruce. to make room for native seedlings and pitch pine, to loosen the earth for worms and bugs, to woo back warblers, towhees, Baltimore orioles. But I see nothing new, only the dying and the dead. Yet, deeper in the woods, smells evergreen my nose. Burbles of waterfalls tether my terrier and she drinks greedily. Trails diverge. Flickers invite me up the beaten path where boughs of ribbons dangle ornaments. Shining spheres without spikes. Glittery spirals twirling in a space of positive pressure. The corridor of green has ladders of light. My eyes climb to a rare red crossbill, inviting interruption of migrants, calling, come, come, here, here, here. Come, come, here, here, here is enough for the long, hard winter. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. Wow. I want to ask you though, your poetry I find so persuasive, right? I mean, I read it and it's so powerful, not only because it's so lyrical, but also because it does it informs and persuades, I think, at the same time. And so is that something that when you're writing, is that something that is the end result, or is that kind of your goal along the way?
Well,
how do you?
I got some very good advice early in my career from a children's book editor, and I write about difficult issues in my children's books as well, refugees, child soldiering. And I was told by a couple editors, so, it's kind of like beaten into me that in order to get readers to feel what you're feeling, try writing about a character or a person, the humanity going through these crises instead of the crises itself. A lot of times I just want to channel my anger and get it all out. But at the same time, I think if you want readers to really identify with the issue and its impact on people, you have to bring the humanity, or in some cases the animals, you have to bring the living things into the issue to show what the impact is on them.
Okay, thank you. I'll have to think about that next time I approach it, some of these topics, some serious topics like yours. I noticed, by the way, when you said it was written for older people, I noticed you looked at me in the screen. I noticed that. I did.
Did I look at you?
You check the tape tomorrow. You looked at me. You said it's not for young ones, it's for older. And but thank you anyway.
I just turned 60 this year, so
no, I'm just teasing.
I'm a sexagenarian, right. My husband tells me.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
So up next for us is none other. I talk about another name that should look familiar. Julia Morris Paul. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in such literary journals as Comstock Review, New Mexico Review, Here, Radar Poetry, Connecticut Review, Minerva Rising, and Mom Egg Review, as well as in numerous anthologies. Her chapbook, Staring Down the Tracks, was published by the Poetry Box, and her book, Shook, by Grayson Books. She's president of the Riverwood Poetry Series, really active group, an awesome group too. It's a long-standing reading series in Hartford, and she's also an elder law attorney who always gives me her card every time I see her. Speaking of looking, she says here you go. But again, thank you for joining us, Julia.
Well, thank you for inviting me to read and for hosting us tonight. And thank you to all who are here listening to this amazing panel of poets. I can't see you, but I do appreciate you. And I am so honored to be reading with the other poets tonight. I'll preface my reading by telling you that my oldest son suffered for many years from substance use disorder and tragically lost his life in 2020 from an overdose. I'm going to be reading 3 poems tonight, one from my chapbook, which Jose mentioned. It's called Staring Down the Tracks. It's a collection of poems about active addiction, and that poem will be followed by 2 newer poems. So the first poem is called Tracks. Clothespin thin, he lugs bundles of belongings down a dirt path to a canopy of trestles over the old tracks, behind Save-A-Lot and Soapy Suds. Homeless is the turn of a knob to a spot in the woods where rivulets of mud follow the tracks. Holes in his shoes, holes in the tent pull the cold rain through. Nothing's whole. Sean and Sharon see him begging for money outside Walmart. Don't recognize him, so skinny and with dreads now. They lock the car doors. Hey, Sharon, he says to the glass. He roots through what's left of the curbs, couches and mirrors and crockpots, this and that, a barter for survival. He makes deals with the dealer who deals out of the bodega on King Street. Grandmothers look the other way, bundles clutched tight. He finds no vein for happy. Just to be touched, he wraps his arms across his chest. The poem I'm going to share next is called Kintsugi, which is a Japanese art form where broken pottery is repaired with melted gold. In the process, the piece becomes beautiful in its imperfection. The poem begins with a fragment mimicking the brokenness. It's called Kintsugi. Thread of life, broken, fragments, shattered glass, fissures of darkness. Take that which is broken or cracked, mend it with gold. The thread of gold joining the fragments is prayer. Gratitude for prolonged life, desire for strength, respect for the shattered, for what came before the shattering. They say an object is transformed by its repair, made more beautiful, even stronger. But has it merely endured? What of its purpose? I broke to pieces when he died, like a piece of wedding china on a tile floor. It's untrue that time heals all wounds. Every amputee knows that. Time makes you older. Time is the life he won't live. This glass of wine is not gold. I drink it anyway to fill the fissures. Yet, see how a single streak of gold in the broken glass of night joins lake to sky. This final poem that I'm going to share is actually the first poem that I wrote after my son died. It was my way of trying to envision what moving forward would be like. It's called On Buying a Paddleboard After the Death of My Son. The salesman who said February is the best time to buy a paddleboard had a nice smile and was around my son's age. I wanted to hug him for his mother, who was probably not at that moment thinking how lovely he is. I had paddleboarded once on Cochiti Lake. It was like floating on sunlight. There were no sharp edges. The lake was boundless. The lake was gentle. It was the life I longed for. It was the life I longed for my son. I want to focus on the distance while slipping past it. I want my balance back. I want to lift my eyes to the sky without going under. I want to float while on bended knees. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. If only the wind could take me away. When I unclench my fist, the wind will take him away. When I fall, the water will release me over and over. I want to be brave enough to float again. With something solid beneath me, I will throw his name into the air. I will move through the water toward an absence that is everywhere. Nevertheless, I will move through the water. Thank you.
So powerful, Julia. So powerful in many ways. Thank you for sharing those poems with us, and our sympathies over and over again. Such a loss. I wanted to ask you though, if you don't mind me asking, how you gather the strength not only to write about such personal loss, but also to read publicly, right, and to share it, which again is, I think, is a gift for us, and yet it must take such strength. How are you able to do that, Julia?
I don't necessarily consider it strength. I consider it necessity.
Yeah.
I have to write
Okay.
about it. And I think it's really important to share it as well, particularly to speak out about substance use disorder. There are those of us, we're in a pandemic, and many poets write about experiences in the pandemic. Opioid addiction is an epidemic, and it's very important that we write about it, that we speak about it, that we share our experiences so people understand what that's like. It's taking the lives of so many young people, particularly during the pandemic. So I think it's really a necessity, and hopefully these poems are not just viewed as personal to my experience, but universal. There's no one on this planet who is not going to suffer loss or grief in their lifetime. So I write this as my offering to those who know that kind of loss and suffering.
Sure. Well, thank you for that offering. And I do think that many of us not only will know that suffering, but many of us know people who are suffering because of substance abuse, and who will continue to suffer, unfortunately, in some cases. So thank you once again for that reading. Thank you. Up next is Summer Tate. And Summer Tate, she is someone who, again, I don't know what this theme is. She's telling me, that she is teaching seniors at her high school, and then she looked at me earlier and she said, "It's seniors, but not like you." Said, all right, that's where you're going to go. So Summer has been writing and performing poetry for 20 years. She teaches senior English in Hartford, Connecticut. And she's a mother of 2. She holds a master's in English education and received her MFA in creative writing and publishing from Fairfield University. She was a co-presenter at AWP in Tampa, along with Frederick Douglass Knowles and Bessie Reina. Bessie Reina, somewhere out there, I know she is. You can't get a permit for anything Latino unless Bessie signs off on it. But Summer, that night, I'm telling you, that day, Summer, you would have been so proud. She made Connecticut proud. People went up to her and asked her all sorts of questions. So thank you for joining us, Summer.
Thank you for having me. Thank everyone for reading. So moved. It really is, Julia, I just have to say, it's really speechless. And thank you for your offering. I appreciate it. And thank you, of course, Jose, for inviting me. I am going to be sharing with you guys a little bit from my master's thesis that I wrote about my grandmother's family from Maine. My grandmother's father was born on a small island off the coast of Pittsburgh called Malaga Island. And my grandmother did not know of his life until she was about 75 years old. And she, of course, gave us some of that history, to be able to kind of understand who we were. And she understood who she was later in her life. So I've written a group of poems, and I'll share a few with you guys, and then I'm going to share a couple of my newer pieces. This poem is called Letter to My Malaga Ancestors. Sitting in this New England coffee shop, the hiss of steaming milk for lattes stirs me to write to you. I, fourth generation Malagite, amongst other attributes attached to my existence with or without my acceptance or acknowledgement, hold the Malaga genes. They hid from my line of sight, even longer for my Gram and her siblings, 75 years to be exact. Not knowing where you are from is menacing, like having amnesia and trying to find home. I've been so jealous of people with a precious knowledge of their ancestry, knowing where their DNA lived and roamed and all its customs. Now here I am with a jigsaw puzzle set before me. Archaeologists dug up some history of our people from the Isle, placed them in labeled baggies with pictures matted and redefined. I've seen the newspaper articles, missionary journals, town meeting notes calling for our eviction from, and others calling for our salvation. During that time, some of us died, while others were institutionalized. I search for our voices to tell our story. I want to discover us, want to be made whole, want the joy of getting our memories back. So that is really, for part of my master's thesis, was gathering all of this information and trying to figure out how to tell a story of a people I didn't know without being an outsider from it. It was very difficult to kind of write about who you are without really knowing who you are or actually being within that. The next piece that I want to share with you is about a picture that my grandmother had after her knowledge. The geologist actually came to my grandmother trying to find out more information about the people that lived on Malaga Island. And my grandmother said, I don't know. She didn't even know at 75. And they started actually giving her all this information. And they gave her a picture of her father at 6 years old. And this is my poem about that picture that hangs in my grandmother's dining room. Family Group Malaga Island. My gram displays the once living in monotone gloss on her dining room wall. Light brown, dark brown skin turned to a dull gray in the black and white photo. 4 Malagites with slits across their lips and their history in their mouths awaiting the flash. Graham says they labeled this photo wrong. It is not their father, more like a play uncle, standing with his chest out, fists tight on hips, freezing this moment in time until he can go back to patching the roofs and mending the fences to keep out cold and keep in hope. The 2 male children, Graham said, are my great uncle Len and great grandfather Harold, posturing like they have marbles in their cheeks. Uncle Len, the bigger one, seated with a dark suit jacket and no shirt or shoes on, right pant leg rolled up, leaning against the front door. The small one, with the long-sleeved white button-down shirt and thin suspenders, is my shoeless 6-year-old grandfather. Just a boy balanced with one foot on a stone step as he gazes, searching beyond the photographer. And the husky woman to the left, Graham said, is somebody's mama, snuggling a long-haired coon cat atop her tattered apron. The newspapers from 1902 that Graham showed me says that this was not even considered living, that their life wasn't an existence fit for dogs. Still, the one-room house on the water's edge promised freedom and warmth, where clothes on the line waved a salty hello and goodbye, where small gardens were tended and the dusty clay was swept from the dirt floors. Their handmade fences stood sturdy and proud, like knuckles ready for the fight, as if one hand behind their backs could take on a state and the communities of hate behind their picket fences on the other several beneath their waist belts. Did they know this moment would be matted, enlarged, and studied, questioned for its evidence of a people within a frame, of their ability to unshackle hatred, with their home in the background as it would forever be, swept into the scenery of Maine's sad history? Thank you. So this is from a new edition that I would like to share. It's called The Drowning Daughter's Guide to Surviving in This Universe. And it actually is from a painting that a watercolor painting that I painted. So hope you like it. When water becomes cement, it happened right before they colored us in, shaded us heavy-handed in the back room of the house as watercolored beings wearing cement shoes made to sink us into place on a white canvas, but we are not colored. We are hardened because color is the absence of light, because black is the opposite of white, and history weighs on the tongue and tastes like time infused into an oil-drenched sea, salty with blackness, but we are not colored. We stiffened inside the lines we are designed for, drawn messy with muddled hands like the color of sand and rocks that moved bodies like gold pieces across a map, with intentions hard as milky pale bones that bend to break us, to fit into boxes marked colored, but we are not colored. We bleed out of the lines as fraudulent artists try to hide stars in striped silhouettes made on stolen mountains to Rushmore into his story, mixing lies and truths to glue in brown and yellow children who sing the spirituals left by and for the oppressed, who were made to believe that they were invisible if not painted in. But we are not colored. We are strengthened by the blend of solid shade swung bright on a star. We are liquid energy shimmering clear right before it burst and became to be. We lay stony beneath the painter's brush, filling with silence a mastery made sturdy, the moment before water touches the elements to harden it away and close minds to the fact that we are more than pigment. We paint ourselves into the corner of our smiles, leaving us to fill in our own empty buckets at the edge of rivers crusted over with the remnants of color that left watermarks on our insides, making our shadows shine. But we are not colored, just humans cemented in time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Oh my goodness. Thank you. But that last poem, tell me you've submitted it somewhere. No, I
know
knew that
I'm
was going to
like
be the
writing
answer,
lesson
and that's why I
plans
asked
and
you.
creating papers. I have excuses.
Nope, that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer. The right answer is going to be next time. I'm going to keep bugging you about that because that one needs to be shared. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for all those poems. I want to ask you though, when you share these poems, given that it's New England, right? And New England can be kind of, sometimes when it comes to race, you unpredictable at times. So when you share some of these poems that deal with race, What kind of reaction do you get?
I've lived in New England my entire life, and my my people are from Maine. We're Mainers. Okay, so it's very interesting. It's very interesting because I think New England has been romanticized. This idea of Mark Twain, Harriet Beecher Stowe, the savior narrative that comes out of New England kind of makes it to be colored. Makes being colored somewhat mythical in New England. That it's a very different existence than it is in the South. And even though some people would, say that Maine is the South of New England, that it really, So when I share, a lot of people are like, they didn't know about the atrocities that have occurred in New England due to race, and I think for some people it's enlightening for them and a reality. Yeah.
Okay, I bet it is.
Thank you.
Good. Well, I'm so glad that you're sharing them, honestly. Really, and thank you. So our next presenter is Daniel Donaghy. And Daniel Donaghy, he's the author most recently of Somerset. He's the co-winner of the Patterson Poetry Prize. And he's also the author of Start with the Trouble. I love that title. Winner of the University of Arkansas Press Poetry Prize, which is a big prize. He received a 2019 Artist Fellowship from the Connecticut Office of the Arts, and he's a professor of English at Eastern Connecticut State University, where he edits here and does a wonderful job with that, a poetry journal with his students, and where I think Summer is going to be submitting some material next for your next issue. Right? I heard that rumor somewhere.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, everyone who has gone so far. Deja, if you're still there, the first thing in your bio that stuck out to me is that you went to a math and science high school. I went to the High School for Engineering and Science growing up in Philadelphia. So, there can be this perception that there isn't a relationship between the hard sciences and the arts, and that just is not so, and you're proving that, and I really appreciated your poems. I could just go down the list of how much I admire everything that I've heard. Thank you, Aaron. I loved reading and having your poems in the background, and Peggy and Summer, I really appreciate meeting your work here tonight. And Julia, I have, as people who might not know, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm going to read stuff that's not really rooted in Philadelphia tonight, but I have a friend, Julia, who's going through a difficult situation in Philadelphia now, and I bought her a copy of your chapbook, and I'm going to send it to her because people suffering with addiction and working toward recovery can feel so filled with shame and that they're all alone, and like they're on this hopeless treadmill. And I know that your words are going to bring her solace, and I hope offer some strength as she moves forward. So I would like to begin with just one poem about Philadelphia, and then try something a little different here on Earth Day. This is a poem called Our Back Alley. That idea of Faulkner's, we write about our postage stamp of the world. Well, here's a back alley in the Kensington section of Philadelphia. Our back alley, no wider than a nun's yardstick, disappeared midsummer within weed fields at either end where houses had been knocked down. It led past smashed lamplights to Jasper Street and Ann's Corner Store, with its freezer of push pops and king cones, and the cooler that chilled my Mountain Dews, and the twirling pretzels I ran home with so my father and I could eat them hot. It led across the street from Ann's to Felix's bar, and around the corner to our neighborhood water ice stand, famous Italian ices and its 48 outrageous flavors. It led to the lot where we caught grasshoppers and praying mantises and stabbed lid Maxwell jars, and where we piled wet fused newspapers and stomped cans we'd haul on our bikes to sell at Westmoreland Recycling. It led to the wooden back fence in the Oakdale Street abandoned house, where older kids crowbarred the city's sheet metal from its doorframe and showed us their father's magazines and the bare mattresses to which they said they brought their girlfriends. It gave our family a new cat nearly every year. It reeked of urine. It hit us when we threw snowballs at cops. It turned into a creek when it rained, streamed maggots and branch sticks and crushed styrofoam cups past our small, identical yards, grills and kiddie pools and spider plants leaning toward afternoon sun. It needed shadows thrown from an unbroken line of fences and lost itself after the Oakdale Street house came down and the others next to it lost its angry ghosts, its prostitutes and singers and sorrowful lovers calling up to back windows, begging for one more chance. It held us by the collar once, said switchblades and blackjack, said steal, but never from each other, said act crazy until you feel crazy, and if you die young, you die, but you go out knowing you never took shit from anybody. Then it gave way to the light, and some of us saw other ways out. I'd like to just read one more poem. It's a bit of a longer poem, so I'll get right to it. If you are, the great thing is everyone is on the internet right now. If you went to explore.org, not in this window, you'd open up a new window, but if you go to explore.org and search eagles, one of the first things you're going to see is a webcam for an eagle who currently right now is watching over her nest of eaglets in Decorah, Iowa. And that's what inspired this next poem. Growing up in Philadelphia, the Eagles were a football team. Theoretically, they lived in the air. I'd heard of such things, but I had a lot to learn. And the great thing, this was a webcam that my daughter showed me right before I was about to teach. My daughter, Abigail, who in this photo was 10. She's now 20, so just take that and double it, and you have Abigail. So if you would like to look at the eagles while I'm reading this poem, you can't do that with every poem or at every poetry reading. So this is a poem called How Close, and it starts with an epigraph from Joy Harjo's Eagle poem, where she says the words, "We see you, see ourselves, and know that we must take the utmost care and kindness in all things." And I offer this in many ways as a challenge to the great work that Margaret Gibson has done as our state poet laureate, and certainly has done in her work throughout her career, and in making it all of our jobs to speak out against injustices wherever we see them, and also in defense of the earth. So this is my attempt at that. It's called How Close. You've seen the steel stairs of broken-winged rescues on zoos' stripped branches and birch boughs, and cartoon versions of their huge fan-tailed wings and fearsome faces in silhouette on football helmets and sweatshirts and faded car trunk magnets. And you've marveled at photos in which they glide stiff-winged across blue-blurred western skies and swoop down talus slopes to snatch in their talons salmon and suckers, with a grip 10 times stronger than a man's. But until your daughter sent you a link to a webcam, watching a mother and father nurse their just hatched babies in a windstorm, you'd never seen a bald eagle's fierceness displayed as love. In 5 minutes, you'll teach contemporary poetry. For the past year, your classroom has been your basement. Your students Zoom boxes of names, most without faces, their cameras turned off, mics muted until you open the day's breakout rooms. In groups of 5 or 6, you found they're more likely to let themselves be seen and heard as they work through questions on the readings. Moving from group to virtual group, you watch them start each discussion awkwardly, as if waking in fog, logged into school from their kitchens and beds, and while they work or walk or drive. Even your best students are blank-faced and at least a little sad. So for them, almost as much as for yourself, you scrap plans to talk about nature poetry and show them where it comes from, 100 feet up, a stick straw nest yards wide and deep, swaying in what another website tells you is 15 degrees with 40-mile-an-hour winds. The only sounds you hear as the father flies off and the mother sits still except for her twitch-turned head. No sign yet during class of the babies beneath her, which you forget somehow to mention to your students before you share your screen and ask them to jot down what they see, details for each sense. And just as you join them, writing that everything around her is brown but her crown and beak, and note how huge the nest is, wonder how long it took the couple mated for life to weave it, or if they took over another couple's who died or moved, a student says, "Oh my God," and there they are, both of them, shivering, egg wet, downy gray, the mother showing the class and you how she rips into a gashed trout, how she tilts her head as if to kiss with her hooked beak her nearly blind eaglets, their new eyes just open, necks too weak to rise. She bends with a sliver of fish toward the faster one, firstborn most likely, who's ravenous, flailing, so the handoff doesn't happen, the fish disappearing into the nest. She tears another piece, and this time it works. The eaglet takes the flesh and swallows, hungrier for a second bite it seems than the first. And then she feeds the shyer one, same deal. Fish falls, she gets more. It works. Moving back and forth to the gutted fish until she decides they've had enough and stands over them, kneads the straw before she lowers herself, rises, lowers, their world becoming again the darkness beneath her. She'll do this for hours. You'll come back to watch later. The father will take his shifts too, stuffing straw beneath him to make up for his smaller size. He'll feed them another trout near midnight. The mother will zip her head into the overcoat of her wings and shield them from 3 a.m. freezing rain. In the chat, a student writes, "Amazing." And what can you do but agree? Yes, amazing. This autonomy and tenacity, this stamina, this fierce, instinctive goodness to do nothing else for as long as it takes in the face of whatever comes, other than prepare these eaglets for their own soaring, slashing lives. A blaze of pure purpose, new to you, but old as blood to her. That blaze, that blood, poisoned and shotgunned almost into darkness, but saved. One force on our one warming world, saved, almost at its end. How close is almost? How close are we to the end, to too late, to save our one world, in which this eagle can spot a rabbit 2 miles off, dive 3 times faster than a horse could gallop across the muddy fields beneath her this early spring afternoon, when you tell your class they've just seen a poem better than any in a course packet. When, while the students share what they saw, the mother eagle again sits still, simply being what she is, what she'll continue to be, high above you, as long as the air allows, after you've turned back to your day's demands, to your vices, to your phone, to wants and fears that distract and keep you rooted to the earth. Thank you.
About an epic poem, and what a great way to kind of wrap things up with a pandemic, right? A little bit of hope there, and really, really well done. I want to take your class. Doug, on it, and you're going to have me watching bald eagles for some time now. I'm just going to have that on all the time and check that out. You know, thank you for that. So my question to you is here you are in Wyndham, right? Willimantic, that area that is so fruitful in many ways, right? And from the frogs to the history of Curbstone Press, the Julia de Burgos Park, right?
Yes.
Arts and literature here and there. How does that influence your writing?
Well, it's taking a step back from that and coming toward that question. It's amazing to live in a state of all-stars like we do. We have so many people doing such important work in so many different areas. It's just really an honor to know all of you and to hear your work. And I took a peek in the audience, and I'm a fan of so many people in the audience. Some of you, many of you are here. So that's great. You'll be getting your copy soon. I was proofreading that earlier today. But to get back to, Wyndham is an interesting place. Certainly Sandy Taylor and Curbstone Press made that an international, it gained an international reputation for all the work that Sandy and Judy did. But within Willimantic, they're also, it's strange. Wyndham is a town with a city in it of Willimantic, and also the three villages of North Wyndham, South Wyndham, and Wyndham Center, which are very different, And I think what it can do is try to celebrate the polyphony of those voices. I have our poetry column that we run in the newspaper every Saturday and try to get a local author in the paper. So if you are a Wyndham poet and I haven't published your poem in the newspaper yet, you need to help me fix that and celebrate your work in our local paper. But it's
stuff,
I think it's also, I appreciate what others said earlier. And I'm trying to think of it might have been Deja again. He's talking about the coming to a landscape with so much experience. I'm a transplant to Connecticut. So I bring that outsider's perspective, but then you're also kind of open to appreciating everything that's there. So in many ways, because I'm not from here, I'm always learning more of what else it can be about. And what I'm seeing is that there's just, there's no such thing as a Connecticut poet or a Wyndham poet or Willimantic poet. There's so many people.
Well, we'll still claim you. We're going to claim you.
I've been here a long
We're going to claim
time
you
now.
Instead of Philly. All right.
Yeah. Well, come on. How long would I last? I'm here. I've lost my accent. I heard that the Philly accent is the toughest one to imitate, and now it's gone. I can't even think it. It's true. I
did hear that. You mentioned the word all-stars, and I want to thank everyone, including Jotham and of course Christiana back there working hard, and the Connecticut Literary Festival, and all the all-stars who are watching us tonight. It's been a wonderful night, and of course the all-stars who read tonight. Thank you all for a wonderful evening. Really, really appreciate it. We're gonna shut the door in just a second, but thank you all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all very